My son was dying and needed my kidney. My daughter-in-law said, "That's your duty, because you're his mother." The doctor was already prepared to operate. Then suddenly my 9-year-old grandson burst into the room and shouted, "Grandma, let me tell the truth about why my dad really needs your kidney." The entire medical team froze in that moment. Margaret lay on the cold operating table. The white light above shone directly into my eyes. It was so bright I wanted to close them, but I couldn't. My whole body was rigid, not from the chill but from the suffocating weight pressing down on me, like fate itself was tightening around my throat. The beeping of the heart monitor echoed steadily, but each beat felt like a hammer striking my skull. I could hear every sound in the room. The clinking of metal as the nurse arranged the instruments, the rustle of papers as Dr. Stevens flipped through the medical file, and the muffled whispers behind the glass, where my daughter-in-law Amanda stood with her parents. I strained to look through the frosted glass. Amanda stood with her arms crossed, eyes sharp as a blade, whispering something to her parents but never looking away from me, as if commanding me, "Sign it, do it. Don't hesitate. I had already signed the consent form to donate my kidney to Michael, my son. That paper must have been sitting on the doctor's desk with my trembling signature, an agreement I could never take back." A nurse was already holding the syringe. The vial of anesthesia gleamed under the light. I closed my eyes and tried to breathe deep, but my chest felt heavy as lead. I thought of Michael, my eldest, the boy I had raised and sacrificed for my whole life. He was lying in room number 4 next door, frail, waiting for my kidney to survive. I told myself I was doing the right thing. As a mother, I had to. But why did my heart feel hollow, filled with nameless dread? A sudden crash echoed. The door to the operating room burst open, a cold draft rushing in and rattling the tray of instruments. The whole room went still. I opened my eyes and strained to lift my head, strapped down as I was. Ethan, my 9-year-old grandson, rushed in like a small storm. His shoes were caked with mud, his school uniform wrinkled, his chest heaving with every breath. Behind him, a nurse ran in panic, yelling, "You can't be in here, stop!" But Ethan didn't stop. He ran straight to me, his wide eyes brimming with fear but blazing with determination. "Grandma," he said, his voice shaking yet so clear it pierced my heart. "I have to tell everyone why my dad really needs your kidney." The entire room fell silent. The beeping of the heart monitor grew louder, tearing through the silence. A surgeon nearby dropped his clamp, the metallic clatter against the tile cutting through the tension. I stared at Ethan, the same child I had once cradled in my arms, told bedtime stories to. Now he stood there, clutching an old cell phone, his face pale but his eyes fierce with courage. What did he know? Why would he say that? My heart pounded wildly, as if it would burst from my chest. I wanted to shout, to ask him right then, but my throat was so dry no words came out. "Doctor." Stevens frowned and raised his hand, signaling the team to pause. His voice was low but firm. "Say it now." His eyes flicked past me and settled on Ethan, as if even he felt pulled into that strange moment. Amanda slammed against the glass, making it shake. "Don't listen to him, he's just a child," she shrieked, her voice high and frantic. But her eyes were no longer cold. They trembled with panic, like a secret was about to be exposed. Ethan didn't look at his mother. He only looked at me, his small hand clutching the phone so tightly his knuckles turned white. He drew a deep breath, as if gathering every ounce of courage he had. I wanted to rise, to hold him, to calm him, but I couldn't move. All I could do was watch. And in his eyes, I saw pain, a truth he was desperate to bring into the light. In that breathless moment, memories came flooding back. I remembered our old house in Ohio, where every corner smelled faintly of disinfectant. I was 57, yet often felt decades older, as if time had drained the life out of me. My husband, John, had been bedridden for over 10 years. He sat in an old wheelchair that squeaked every time I rolled him out to the porch. He rarely spoke, only sighing now and then, his eyes lost in the distance. Once, I held his hand and asked, "John, are you tired of this life?" He only blinked, offering no reply. That house was my whole world, where I raised my 2 sons, Michael and Daniel. I did everything to provide for them. Early mornings I sold vegetables and fruit at the farmer's market. Afternoons I sewed clothes for neighbors, sometimes working past midnight to finish mending. My hands grew rough, my nails always lined with dirt, but I never complained. I only hoped Michael and Daniel would live better lives. Michael, my eldest, was my pride. Strong, tall, working construction, always coming home with laughter that filled the house. But in recent years, he had grown weaker. At first it was just fatigue, then weight loss, sunken eyes. One day he told me he was urinating blood. I panicked, held him and asked, "Michael, what's happening?" He just shook his head and gave a faint smile. "Don't worry, Mom. I'm just overworked." Amanda came into our lives like a sudden breeze, beautiful, sweet, devoted to caring for Michael. She brought him medicine, cooked meals, reminded him when to take his pills. Neighbors praised me for having such a good daughter-in-law, and I believed it too. But sometimes I caught that calculating coldness in her eyes. Once I overheard her whispering on the phone at night, "Don't worry, everything is going according to plan." When I asked, she forced a laugh. "Just a friend, Mom. Go to wind." Bed. Daniel, my younger son, 26, lived nearby, working as a handyman. Quiet, but every visit he brought food. He worried about me, once saying, "Mom, don't work yourself too hard anymore." I only smiled, telling him to care for his brother instead. Ethan, my grandson, was the only light in those heavy days. He would sling his backpack down, sit in the yard, and play with toy cars. Once he whispered, "Grandma, I hear Mom on the phone at night saying something about medicine for Dad, but I don't understand." I patted his head, telling him she was probably talking to the doctor. Still, a seed of doubt sprouted inside me. Then, one afternoon, everything changed. I was cooking when Amanda walked in. No greeting, no smile, arms crossed, her voice sharp as a knife. "Mom," the doctor said, "only your kidney matches. It's your responsibility. You have to save him." My body froze, the spoon slipped into the pot. In her eyes I saw nothing but cold command. My throat tightened. "Amanda, I know. I'll do everything for Michael." She nodded and walked away. Not 10 minutes later, her parents arrived too. They sat upright at the dining table and spoke in unison. "A mother's duty cannot be avoided. This whole family depends on you." I felt cornered. Michael, so thin he was hardly recognizable, gripped my hand and whispered, "Mom, I know you'll save me." His eyes, once so full of joy, were now only weary and pleading. I nodded, unable to speak, while the room closed in, airless. That night, as always, I brought a bowl of soup to John. The creak of his wheelchair wheels across the cement floor echoed the weight I carried. I wanted to ask if what I was doing was right, but he only sighed, silent as a shadow. I stepped outside and saw Ethan with his toy car. He looked up, eyes bright but questioning. Grandma, what if someone got sick because of medicine another person gave them? I froze, my heart twisting. Why do you ask that? Son? I said, forcing calm. Ethan only lowered his head and pushed his toy car again, saying nothing more. I didn't know then that I was standing on the edge of a cliff, only a few steps away from falling. After that evening when Amanda cornered me, life felt crushed by an invisible weight, heavier than the stifling Ohio summer heat. I still rose early to sell produce at the market, still sat under the dim lamp at night to sew, still fed John, but my soul no longer found peace. Every step, every stitch carried the question, am I really doing the right thing? Do I truly have to sacrifice this way? Michael's pleading eyes, Amanda's cold words, and her parents' watchful stares clung to me, stealing my breath. The next morning, just after sunrise, Amanda was already at my door. I had just poured hot mint tea when she walked in without knocking, without greeting. "Mom," she said firmly, "the doctor says time is running out. If you hesitate, he could be in danger." She set a stack of medical papers on the table, pages filled with numbers and signatures I couldn't understand. She pointed line by line as if teaching a child. "It says right here you're the only match. No one else can save him." I stood there holding the teapot, scalding water burning my hand without me even noticing. I only heard the scrape of my broom against the floor as I began sweeping, as if to escape Amanda's gaze. "I heard you," I whispered. "I'll do everything for Michael." But inside, a stone pressed down so heavy I wanted to scream, to run. I kept sweeping, the bristles dragging like a sorrowful rhythm drowning out Amanda's words. But she didn't leave. She stood watching me, waiting for me to nod again, to ensure I wouldn't dare refuse. When she finally left, I sank into a chair, covering my face with my hands. I thought of little Michael, running after me at the market, tugging my skirt, laughing. "Mom, when I grow up, I'll build you a beautiful house." Now he lay so frail, only a shadow of himself. Could I let him go without doing something? But each time I thought of donating my kidney, fear swept over me. Not fear of the surgery, but of something darker, larger. I couldn't see clearly. That night, Amanda's parents arrived. They brought a basket with apples and oranges, set it down carelessly, then sat in the two best chairs like they owned the place. Her father, Richard, coughed a few times, then rasped, "In my day, parents sacrificed everything for their children. My mother sold all her land to save my brother. Now it's your turn. You must do the same." Amanda's mother, Helen, nodded, her gaze sharp as a knife. "If you refuse, this family's honor will collapse." "What will the neighbors say?" "They'll say you don't love your son, that you're unworthy to be called a mother." I sat there, gripping the edge of the table, feeling shoved into a corner. I wanted to ask why all the weight had to fall on me, but I couldn't open my mouth. I only bowed my head, nodding like a machine. That dinner was as heavy as a funeral. Amanda carefully placed a piece of chicken onto my plate, but her voice was cold. "Mom, keep up your strength for the surgery." I stared at the food, unable to swallow. Michael sat across, his face gaunt, eyes sunken, forcing a faint smile. "Mom, I know you'll save me, like you always did when I was a kid." His words cut through me like a blade. I remembered the nights I stayed awake cooling his fever, the times I rushed to bandage his knees when he fell off his bike. I was always there. I was always the mother ready to give everything. But why did I feel so terrified now? Daniel sat in the corner, silent as a shadow. He didn't eat, just stirred his soup, never taking his eyes off Amanda. In his gaze I saw suspicion, as if trying to see through her mask. I wanted to ask him but didn't dare. The air was thick, suffocating, only the clink of spoons against bowls echoed, hammering against my conscience. After dinner, Amanda carried Michael's dish to the sink herself, letting no one touch it. She moved quickly, but I saw her inspect the plate closely, as if making sure no one noticed what might have been left inside. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in my old bed, listening to the ticking clock on the wall. Each second was a reminder that Michael's time was running out. I got up, walked down the hallway for water, and froze at the sound of whispers from Michael and Amanda's room. I held my breath in the dark. Amanda's voice was low but clear. "Yes. After the kidney transplant, we'll have all the data. Don't worry. She won't dare refuse." My heart pounded. My hands shook so badly I had to lean against the wall to stay upright. Data. What were they talking about? I wanted to knock, to confront them, but at that moment Amanda opened the door. She startled at the sight of me, then forced a laugh. "You're still up, Mom? I was just asking about his medicine." I nodded and turned away, but it felt like thorns pierced my chest. Amanda's smile, her voice, all of it was a mask hiding something terrible. The days after that tense conversation with Amanda and her parents felt like living in a foggy dream, where everything familiar had turned strange and frightening. I still went to the farmer's market, still sewed for neighbors, still fed John, but everything was mechanical, hollow. My heart was weighed down as if a dark cloud hovered constantly overhead. Amanda's words, Michael's pleading gaze, all gnawed at me without rest. But then one afternoon, when Ethan came by the house, the first crack appeared in the wall of trust I had tried so hard to hold up. Ethan walked in with muddy shoes and paint still smeared on his hands from art class. He dropped his old backpack in the corner, sat on the floor, and pulled out the plastic toy car I had bought him at the farmer's market last year. I looked at him, forcing a smile though my mind was tangled in knots. Ethan had always been the small light in my darkest days, with his innocent stories and crystal-clear laughter. But that day he didn't laugh. He pushed the car back and forth across the floor, his eyes unfocused until he suddenly looked up at me, staring. "Grandma," he said softly but clearly, "what if my dad isn't sick because of nature, but because someone gave him medicine on purpose?" His words hit me like a slap. The spoon in my hand nearly slipped, but I caught it, trembling. "Why would you say that, Ethan?" I asked, trying to keep my voice calm while my heart pounded violently. I looked into his eyes, so clear yet carrying a worry far too heavy for his age. Ethan didn't answer right away. He lowered his head and kept playing with the car, but I saw his small hand tighten, as if gripping something unseen. I wanted to hug him, to press him for more, but I only forced a weak smile. "You're thinking too much, sweetheart. Your dad is sick, and the doctors are treating him." My smile faltered, and Ethan didn't smile back. He only looked at me, then quietly stood, slung on his backpack, and ran home. His question was like a stone thrown into a still pond in my heart, ripples of suspicion spreading outward. I stood in the small kitchen, staring at the vegetables on the table, unable to focus. I thought of Michael, of the pill bottles Amanda always carried, of the way she controlled everything about my son's care. I told myself I was imagining things. Amanda was Michael's wife. She loved him. She couldn't be hurting him, but deep down I knew something wasn't right. That afternoon, Daniel came over with his toolbox, saying he would fix the kitchen light that had been flickering since last night. I watched him climb the ladder, twist a few wires, and suddenly the kitchen was bright again, But when he came down with the old bulb in his hand, Daniel's face was unusually serious. "Mom," he whispered, "my sister-in-law has been acting strange lately. I found a few unmarked pill bottles in Michael's cabinet that she's been hiding." My hands shook, and I dropped the dish I was washing. Water splashed across my shirt. "What did you say?" My voice cracked. Daniel stepped closer, eyes full of worry. "Mom, I'm scared Michael's illness isn't natural. I think someone might be doing this on purpose." He didn't finish the sentence, but his eyes said everything. I stood there, my hands still wet, feeling the ground collapse beneath me. I wanted to scream, to tell Daniel he was imagining things, that Amanda couldn't possibly do something so monstrous. But the words stuck in my throat. I only stared at him, and in my mind Ethan's question echoed. What if my dad is sick because someone gave him medicine? I tried to chase away the thought, but it clung to me like a shadow I couldn't escape. The next afternoon, I brought rice porridge to the hospital for Michael. The room was blindingly white, the smell of disinfectant so strong it burned my lungs. Michael lay there, gaunt, IV lines in both arms, yet he tried to smile when he saw me. "Mom, you're here," he said weakly. I set the bowl on the small table, and as I prepared to feed him the first spoonful, I noticed Amanda standing by the bed holding a cup of water. She slipped a strange colored pill into it so quickly that if I hadn't been watching closely, I would have missed it. When I stepped closer, she startled and spilled a little water on the floor. "What was that pill, Amanda?" I asked, forcing calm into my voice. She smiled, but it was stiff, unnatural. "It's a kidney supplement. The doctor prescribed it." I nodded, but a chill ran down my spine. I couldn't rest easy. When Michael finished eating, I went to find the doctor. Patel, attending physician, a middle-aged man with thick glasses. "Doctor," I asked, my voice trembling, "did you prescribe any new kidney supplements for Michael?" He looked surprised as he checked the chart. "No, we haven't prescribed anything new. His current medications are sufficient." His words left me numb. I stood frozen in the hallway, the loudspeaker blaring announcements, my mind blank. Amanda had lied. What was that pill? Why hide it? That afternoon, Ethan came to my house again. This time he didn't play with his toy car. He sat on the chair, pulled an old phone from his backpack, its screen cracked in one corner. "Grandma, I want you to hear this." He pressed a few buttons and handed it to me. A recording played. Amanda's voice, whispering but sharp. "After the kidney transplant, the test results will be perfect. Don't worry, she won't dare refuse." The phone slipped from my hand, my body trembling uncontrollably. I looked at Ethan, my sweet grandson, his eyes red as if he was just as scared as I was. "I found it on Amanda's old phone," he said hoarsely. "I don't understand it, but I thought you should know." I pulled him into my arms, fighting back tears. "You're so brave," I whispered. But inside, I was collapsing. Test results. What did Amanda mean? I thought of Michael, of the unmarked pill bottles, of Daniel's worried eyes, of the strange pill in the cup. They were fragments of a puzzle I was too afraid to complete. That night I didn't sleep. I sat in the silence of my house, the ticking of the clock marking every second like a countdown to Michael's end. One morning, I carried a plastic container of hot rice and braised pork to the hospital. The smell clung faintly in the cold, sterile room. Michael lay there, eyes sunken, face pale, still managing a weak smile. "Mom, you're early today." I placed the food on the table, forcing a smile though my heart roared with doubt. The questions of the past few days, Ethan's, Daniel's warnings all screamed inside my head. Amanda was already there, sitting by Michael's bed, eyes fixed on the slow drip of the IV. She didn't look at me or greet me, only gave a slight nod as if my presence meant nothing. On the nightstand I spotted a small bottle, cap loose, half hidden under a crumpled tissue. No label, just a white plastic container with a few strange green pills inside. I picked it up, keeping my voice steady. "What's this, Amanda?" She jolted, almost leaping, and snatched it from my hand so fast I stepped back. "Just vitamins, Mom," she said with that fake smile. "The doctor prescribed them to help his kidneys." I nodded, but ice ran down my spine. Her smile, the way she ripped the bottle back, it was all wrong, like a mask hiding a secret. I sat beside Michael, spoon-feeding him, but my thoughts drifted. I thought of those unmarked bottles, of Daniel's words about the strange pills Amanda hid. I thought of Ethan, of his innocent yet piercing question. What if my dad is sick because someone gave him medicine? I wanted to confront Amanda right there, to scream and demand the truth, but fear stopped me. Fear that if I spoke, everything would shatter, and I would lose Michael forever. I watched him swallow each spoonful and told myself, "Margaret, stay calm. You must find the truth first." By noon, Daniel arrived at the hospital. His hands were greasy, his old t-shirt worn thin. He didn't speak, just sat quietly in the corner, watching Amanda talk with a nurse in the hallway. When she left, Daniel came over, pulled a small plastic bag from his backpack. "Mom, look at this." His whisper was taut as wire. He showed me his phone. On the screen were blurry photos, but clear enough to make my heart stop. Amanda, in the back lot of the hospital, secretly taking a bag from her trunk and handing it to a man I didn't recognize. The man wore a black jacket and a cap pulled low, but I could see the bottles in Amanda's hand, small containers identical to the one on Michael's nightstand. "I took these yesterday," Daniel said, his voice shaking. "I followed her because she was acting so strange, Mom. I think she's doing something to Michael." My throat locked, my fingers squeezing the phone until my knuckles whitened. The cold tile floor seemed to drain the warmth from my body. "Daniel," I whispered, "are you sure? Did you hear them talk?" He shook his head, eyes reddened. I couldn't hear clearly, just saw her hand him the bag and him hand her an envelope. "Mom, something isn't right." I looked into Daniel's eyes, saw his worry and anger, knew he wasn't lying. But still, I didn't want to believe. Amanda was Michael's wife. She had vowed to care for him. How could she be doing something so terrible? That evening, when I returned home, Ethan came again. This time he didn't run or laugh. He sat quietly, hugging his backpack. "Grandma," he said softly but firmly, "I want you to hear this." He pulled out his old phone, hands trembling as he opened an audio file. Amanda's voice spilled out, whispering like a knife slicing through my heart. "After the transplant, the data will be complete. Don't worry, that old woman won't dare refuse. These results are worth 100 times more." I froze. The phone slipped onto the table, my hands shaking uncontrollably. I looked at Ethan, his eyes red, lips pressed tight to keep from crying. "I found it in Mom's old phone," he said, voice choked. "I don't understand it, but I thought you should know." I pulled him into my arms, feeling the world crumble beneath my feet. "You're so brave, Ethan," I whispered, my tears falling freely. I thought of Michael, of the unmarked bottles, of Daniel's photos, of Ethan's recording. All the pieces forming a dark picture I couldn't deny. What was Amanda doing? What data? What results? And why did she call me that old woman who won't dare refuse. I felt betrayed, not just by Amanda, but by my own faith in family and love. That night I didn't sleep. I sat in the silence of my house, listening to sirens wailing outside, red and blue lights flashing through the window like blades cutting my soul. I thought of Michael, growing weaker each day, of those strange pills, of Amanda's calculating whispers. I thought of Daniel's worried eyes, and Ethan, the 9-year-old boy, brave enough to hand me the truth. I held my head, feeling it might burst. I wanted to rush to the hospital, confront Amanda, demand answers, but I was afraid the truth would be more horrifying than I could bear, afraid I wouldn't be strong enough to survive it. I stepped outside, staring at the pale moonlight. I thought of John, my silent husband, sitting in his wheelchair, watching everything. I wanted to tell him, to ask what I should do, but I knew he couldn't answer. I was alone, holding the fragments of a truth slowly coming to light. The next morning, I woke with the weight of the world on my chest. Even the birds singing in the yard, the sound that once brought me peace, now pierced my mind like knives. I knew that today the hospital would decide on Michael's kidney transplant. The evidence from Ethan and Daniel, the audio, the photos, the bottles swirled endlessly in my head, but I couldn't face it. I was terrified that digging deeper would uncover a truth I couldn't survive. I only wanted to save Michael, to see him healthy again, even if it cost me part of myself. Yet deep down, I knew it wasn't that simple. The hospital had called me for a noon meeting. I walked into the small conference room where Dr. Stevens was waiting. He spread the test results across the table. Pages filled with numbers and charts I couldn't comprehend. "Mrs. Margaret," he said heavily, "we've reviewed everything. You are the best match to donate a kidney to Michael. Without this operation soon, his life will be in grave danger." I sat there, clutching the fabric of my dress, my head buzzing like a swarm of bees. "I understand," I whispered so softly I wasn't sure he heard. Dr. Stevens studied me, his expression softening. "Do you need more time to think?" he asked. I shook my head. Not because I had decided, but because I felt trapped. Amanda, her parents, even Michael, they were all depending on me. I couldn't let my son die in front of me. Through the glass window, I saw Amanda standing with her arms crossed, eyes sharp as knives, nodding at her mother Linda, as if certain I wouldn't dare refuse. That gesture made me shiver, like they were playing a game of chess where I was only the pawn. I wanted to stand up, to scream that I knew about the pills, the recording, but I couldn't. I only sat there, feeling myself locked in a cage with no escape. That evening, I called the family into my small room. It was crowded, the yellow light from the old bulb casting shadows on the cracked walls. I placed a teapot on the table. The smell of mint couldn't drive away the heavy atmosphere. Amanda's parents, Richard and Linda, sat in the best chairs as if they were the hosts. Amanda sat beside them, fingers intertwined, glancing at me as if to make sure I wouldn't change my mind. Michael slumped in an armchair, his face pale, his breathing weak. Daniel leaned against the wall, silent, his eyes bloodshot as though barely holding back an explosion of anger. Ethan curled up in a corner, clutching his little backpack, his eyes full of worry. I took a deep breath, my hands trembling as I set the teapot down. "I've made my decision," I said, my voice shaking but trying to sound firm. "I will donate my kidney to Michael." The room erupted like a bomb had gone off. Linda clapped her hands with a shrill voice. "That's what a real mother does. I knew you wouldn't let this family down." Amanda covered her face, tears rolling down, but I saw her fists clenched tight as if she, Jodin and Tantals, were performing on stage. "Oh, Mom," she said with a choked voice. "I knew you loved him most. Thank you." Michael looked at me with tired eyes, still managing to whisper, "Mom, I owe you my life." His words pierced straight into my heart. But at that moment, Daniel leapt to his feet and slammed his hand on the table. The sound made the teacups tremble. "No!" he shouted, his voice shaking with fury. "Mom, don't you see? You're sacrificing yourself for a cruel scheme. She's using you, using Michael." The air grew thick, the only sound a mosquito buzzing near the lamp. Amanda sprang up, pointing straight at Daniel. "What are you saying? How dare you accuse me? Everything I've done is for my husband." But Daniel didn't back down, his eyes blazing. "Accuse you? What about the unmarked pill bottles? The midnight phone calls? Mom, you can't let them deceive you like this." I looked from Daniel to Amanda, then finally to Michael. I wanted to speak, to tell Daniel to calm down, but I couldn't. I only lowered my head, feeling the whole world crash down on my shoulders. That night, I sat alone in my small room at the old wooden desk. The oil lamp flickered, lighting the shaky lines I wrote into my will. I left the house to Daniel, a few small belongings to Ethan. Each stroke of the pen felt like a cut into my heart. I didn't know if I would survive the surgery, but I wanted to prepare, to leave something for those I loved. John sat motionless in his wheelchair in the corner, staring at me with vacant eyes. I saw his hand trembling, as if he wanted to say something but couldn't. I looked at him, tears falling. "John, I have to do this, don't I? I have to save Michael." He didn't answer, only blinked, tears running down his gaunt cheeks. I folded the will, tucked it into the bottom of the old wooden box where I kept our wedding keepsakes. Outside, rain poured, mingling with my sobs. At dawn, the sky still dark, fog. Covering the narrow road to the hospital, I lay on a stretcher in the ambulance. I clutched a small cloth bag with a few clothes and the embroidered scarf from my wedding day. The siren wailed, but I barely noticed. Streetlights blurred through the window like fragments of a broken dream. I closed my eyes, trying to breathe, but my chest felt as heavy as stone. Today was the day I would give my kidney to Michael. I had decided. I had written my will. I had prepared my mind, yet my heart still clenched as if I were falling into a nightmare with no escape. When the ambulance stopped, a nurse wheeled me down an endless hallway. The wheels screeched against the tile like hammers pounding my skull. Amanda followed right behind, her steps light but deliberate, like a prison guard. "Don't worry, Mom," she said quietly, her voice cold. "After the surgery, everything will be fine." I glanced over, catching the glimmer of triumph in her eyes, as if she had already won. Her smile chilled me, not from the cold, but because I realized I was only a pawn in the game they had set up. At the admissions desk, Amanda's parents were already there. Richard wore an old but neatly pressed suit, Linda in a bright red dress as if heading to a gala, not a surgery. They linked arms with Amanda, greeting the doctors with exaggerated warmth. I heard Linda laugh loudly to a young doctor. "Thank you for your help. We'll never forget this." I just stood there, clutching my bag, feeling lost in my own life story. Michael had already been taken to the waiting room. I was allowed to see him before the operation. The room was freezing, Michael's thin arms full of IV lines. His face was pale, his eyes sunken, but when he saw me, he still managed a weak smile. "Mom, thank you." I held his icy hand, tears threatening to spill. "Michael, I'll do everything for you to recover. I said, my voice trembling as if I were trying to convince myself. I looked into his eyes. I saw absolute trust. And I wondered, was I doing the right thing, or risking everything for something I didn't fully understand? Just then, Daniel burst in, his hands greasy, his shirt drenched in sweat as if he had run miles. He gasped for air. "Mom, don't do it. Please don't donate the kidney. Something's not right." I looked at him, his red eyes full of fear and anger. I wanted to tell him I had decided that I couldn't let Michael die, but the words stuck in my throat. I only placed my hand on his, squeezed lightly, and let the nurse wheel me away. Daniel stood there, helpless, shouting after me, "Mom, listen to me." But I didn't dare look back, afraid that one glance into his eyes would break me. The hospital hallway was long and cold, the smell of disinfectant so strong it made me nauseous. The emotionless voice over the loudspeaker announced, "Operating room 3. Prepare for kidney transplant." They brought me into the changing room, dressed me in a cold green gown, placed a cap on my head, and tied a mask. That gown felt like a warning that I was about to lose part of myself. I looked in the mirror, saw the hollow face, the dark circles under my eyes, and whispered, "Margaret, what are you doing? Are you sure this is right?" But then Michael's face flashed in my mind, and I clenched my teeth, moving forward. Walking down the corridor, I saw Amanda and Linda standing near the glass, whispering to a strange man. He wore a black jacket and a cap pulled low, the same man from the photo Daniel had once shown me. I saw Amanda hand him an envelope, which he quickly stuffed into his pocket. My heart pounded, cold sweat breaking out. What were they doing? What was in that envelope? I wanted to stop, to shout, but the nurse tugged my arm, leading me into the operating room. The white lights blinded me. So bright I had to squint. Dr. Stevens stood there, his face stern but calm. "Everything is ready, Mrs. Margaret. Just relax." I nodded, but my body was rigid. The nurse attached electrodes to my chest, the beeping of the heart monitor steady, each beat like a warning. Amanda appeared behind the glass, pressing her face to it, motioning for me to sign the papers the nurse held. My hand shook as I took the pen, ink smudging across the page. When I finished signing, it felt like I had signed my own death sentence. I stared at the trembling signature, thought of the will from the night before, thought of Daniel, thought of Ethan. I asked myself, is this the last moment I'll ever be conscious? As the doctor prepared the anesthesia, my heart raced, sweat soaking my back. I closed my eyes, trying to breathe, but images of Michael, Daniel, Ethan, and even Amanda whirled through my mind. I remembered Ethan's recording, the unmarked bottles, Daniel's photo. I wanted to stop everything, but I couldn't. I had signed. I was here. All that remained was fear, tightening its grip on my heart. But just as the nurse brought the needle close, a loud crash rang out. The door burst open, the hinges screeching. The entire team of doctors and nurses spun around, eyes wide in shock. Ethan stormed in like a whirlwind, his shoes still muddy, his school uniform wrinkled, his chest heaving. He clutched the old phone with its cracked screen as if it were treasure. A nurse ran after him, shouting frantically, "You can't be here! Stop!" But Ethan didn't stop. He ran straight to me, his big round eyes filled with fear but blazing with determination. "Grandma!" he said, his voice trembling but so clear it froze the room. "You have to tell everyone why my dad really needs your kidney." His words detonated like a bomb in my head. I held my breath, my heart stopping. The operating room fell silent, only the monitors beeping, now frantic, echoing like it would shatter the air. One doctor dropped a surgical clamp, the metallic clang cutting through the tension. Dr. Stevens raised his hand, signaling everyone to stop. He frowned, but his voice was steady, firm. "Let the boy speak. Son, whatever you have to say it now." I looked at Ethan. I saw his small hand gripping the phone tightly, his pale face, but his eyes shone with the weight of the world. Outside the glass, Amanda pounded hard, rattling it. "Don't listen to him!" she shrieked, her voice high, nearly hysterical. "He's just a child." But Amanda's eyes were no longer cold. They quivered with panic, as if the secret she had hidden was about to spill out. Ethan didn't look at his mother. He stepped closer to me, his trembling fingers unlocking the phone. A recording played. Amanda's whisper filled the room, sharp as a knife through my chest. "After the kidney transplant, the test results will be perfect. Don't worry, that old woman won't dare refuse." The room exploded in silence. My blood felt frozen, my breath caught in my throat. "Doctor," Stevens spun to me, his eyes wide with shock. "Stop immediately," he ordered, his voice as sharp as a scalpel. "Cease all preparations." A nurse quickly pulled the syringe away. Everyone else froze, too stunned to move. Outside the glass, Amanda screamed, pounding the door. "It's not true! He made it up! The boy was manipulated." But her voice cracked, as if even she didn't believe her own words. I looked at Ethan, saw him break into tears, but still holding the phone tight as if it were his last chance to save me. "I have a video too," he sobbed. He played it. The footage was blurry but clear enough. Amanda and Linda in the hospital parking lot, handing an envelope to the same strange man I had seen before. Linda's voice rang out. "After this surgery, we'll have enough data to sell the drugs overseas. This money will change everything." Tears blurred my vision as I lay there, horrified yet relieved. Horrified because the truth I had avoided was now exposed. Relieved because I no longer had to lie to myself. Daniel rushed in from the hallway, his face red with rage. "Enough!" he shouted, slamming against the glass to face Amanda. "You poisoned him! Did you think we were blind?" Before anyone could react, Daniel struck Amanda with a slap. The sharp crack echoed through the hall, making Linda scream, "How dare you hit my daughter?" But Daniel didn't stop. He pointed straight at Amanda, his voice shaking with fury. "What are those unmarked pills? What did you do to my brother?" Amanda clutched her cheek, tears streaming, but in her eyes I saw no remorse, only fear at being exposed. "You're insane!" she shrieked, turning to Dr. Stevens. "Don't listen to them. They're slandering me." But Dr. Stevens didn't respond. His face pale, he turned to the nurse. "This is no longer a surgery. This is a crime scene. Call the police immediately." A nurse bolted out, the others frozen, glancing at each other in confusion. I lay there, feeling the world collapse. Tears streamed down my face, but I didn't wipe them. I looked at Ethan, my brave little grandson who had charged in to save me. I looked at Daniel, my youngest son, who had done everything to protect me, and I thought of Michael, my child, lying in the next room, unaware that the wife he trusted had betrayed him. I let the tears fall, letting the truth soak into every part of me. In that moment, I knew everything had changed. The truth had broken down the doors, and nothing could hide anymore. The operating room, once cold and silent, was now a battlefield of chaos. Nurses looked at one another, bewildered, unsure what to do. "Doctor." Stevens frowned, his gaze sweeping the room as if to restore order in the storm. I lay there, eyes blurred with tears, unable to turn away from the scene before me. The truth Ethan had revealed burned away the last fragments of trust inside me. Amanda, after Daniel's slap, clutched her cheek, screaming, "How dare you hit me? I did everything for my round." "Husband!" Tears streamed down, but her eyes held only fear, not of a wronged wife, but of someone unmasked. She turned to her parents, clutching Linda's sleeve, her voice choking. "I didn't do anything wrong. I only wanted to save Michael." "Dad! Mom! Say something!" But Richard and Linda stood frozen, their faces ashen, speechless. Linda, once sharp and domineering, now only clenched her fists, biting her lip to stop trembling. Then suddenly she slammed her cane against the floor, the wooden crack echoing as she pointed straight at me. "You dared to make that boy lie and slander me, you wicked old woman." Her words pierced my heart like a blade. I wanted to scream, to say that I had never pushed anyone, that it was her daughter who betrayed my family. But my throat tightened. No sound would come. I just sat there, staring at her, feeling cornered into the shadows where all my years of sacrifice were trampled. Richard whispered urgently to a familiar doctor, "Please continue the surgery. We'll take care of everything. Just end this." He slipped an envelope into the doctor's hand. "But doctor—" Stevens immediately stepped forward, his voice like ice. "Here, the law decides, not money." He snatched the envelope, threw it to the floor, and ordered, "Close the doors. No one leaves. I will report this to the board immediately." His firm footsteps echoed, a clear sign that everything had spun out of control. Daniel burst in from the hallway, ignoring the nurses who tried to stop him. He grabbed my shoulders, his eyes bloodshot as he shouted, "Mom, don't give up your kidney. This is all their scheme. She's the one who poisoned Michael. Why can't he see it?" His voice shook with fury and pain. I looked into his eyes and saw the desperation of a son fighting to protect his mother. I wanted to comfort him, to say something, but I couldn't. I just sat there, feeling the whole world collapse beneath me. From the next room, Michael's weak, bewildered voice carried over, "What's happening? Why is everyone fighting?" He struggled to sit up, gasping for breath, the IV line trembling with each movement. Hearing my son's voice shattered my heart into pieces. Michael had no idea. He didn't know that the wife he loved and trusted had dragged the family into a dark conspiracy. I wanted to run to him, to hold him, and reassure him that everything would be okay, but I couldn't move. I just lay there, tears streaming down, torn between my love for Michael and the horrifying truth that had just been revealed. Ethan stood beside me, sobbing, but still raised his phone, his voice choked. "I have another video. This is when Mom gave the medicine to Grandma and Grandpa." He played the video. On the small screen appeared Amanda and Linda in the parking lot, exchanging something with a strange man. Linda's voice came through, cold and clear. "If the transplant succeeds, we'll sell the drugs overseas. That money will wash away all the dirty profits." The room froze. A nurse covered her mouth, eyes wide with horror. Dr. Stevens stood motionless, gripping the file as if trying to contain his rage. Amanda panicked, lunging to snatch the phone from Ethan's hand, trying to smash it. "No, that's fake!" she screamed, her voice cracking. But Daniel was faster, wrenching it back and shoving Amanda hard onto the floor. One of her high heels flew off, clattering across the tiles like the final punctuation mark to the charade she had staged. "Shut up!" Daniel roared, his face flushed red. "Did you think you could fool us all? What did you do to my brother?" Amanda sat on the floor, her hair tangled, but her eyes still burned with defiance. "I did nothing. You're framing me." That was when the hospital security arrived. Two men in uniform strode in, faces grim. They went straight for Amanda, Richard, and Linda, giving them no time to react. Linda cursed, her hands shaking as she gripped her cane. "Traitor! You destroyed this family!" She pointed straight at me, but her voice cracked, as if even she knew it was over. Amanda struggled as they held her down. "Let me go! I didn't do anything wrong!" But her eyes now showed only the desperation of someone cornered. I lay there, my body cold, my eyes wide open, watching the truth unfold. When the operating room door closed behind the police, Amanda's screams and her parents' shouting still echoed down the hospital hallway. But to me, all those screams faded into the air like a nightmare slowly dissolving. Amanda still shrieked, her voice hoarse. "I was doing this for science. No one understands me." But no one answered. Richard and Linda, who once sat arrogantly in my living room, now bowed their heads, silently led away. I lay on the operating table, still trembling, but no longer out of fear. A strange calm washed over me, as if I had finally been freed from a cage I hadn't realized I was trapped in. Dr. Stevens came closer. His face was stern, but his eyes softened. "Mrs. Margaret," he said in a low voice, "we've canceled the surgery. Michael will be moved to another treatment plan, dialysis combined with new medication. You risked your health preparing for this, but you saved both your life and your dignity." I looked at him, tears streaming but not bothering to wipe them. "Thank you, doctor," I whispered, my voice weak but sincere. I wasn't sure if I had truly saved my dignity, but for the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe, really breathe. Daniel rushed to help me sit up. He held my hand tightly, his eyes firm but heavy with pain. "You still have me," he said, voice breaking. "I'll protect you. From now on, I promise." I squeezed his hand, feeling the warmth of his calloused, oil-stained skin. Looking into Daniel's eyes, I saw the strength of a son, ready to carry the world to protect his mother. "You are my pride," I whispered, tears falling again. Daniel said nothing, only pulled me into a tight embrace. In his arms I found comfort amid the ruins of my family. Michael was moved to recovery. When I entered, he lay there, pale, with IV lines still in his arm. He looked at me, eyes red, and whispered, "Mom, is it true that my wife did all this to hurt me?" His question cut into my heart like a knife. I sat down, held him, and let my tears soak into his hospital gown. "Michael, my son, I don't know how it all began, but I promise I won't let anyone hurt you again." Michael bowed his head, tears streaming down his gaunt face. "Mom, I was wrong. I didn't protect you. I let you suffer so much." I hugged him tighter, feeling as if it was only the two of us clinging to each other after the storm had passed. In the days that followed, the newspapers were filled with headlines. "Drug trafficking ring at local hospital exposed." The article detailed a group of doctors and pharmacists, with Amanda, Richard, and Linda as key links. They had tested illegal drugs on patients like Michael, using kidney transplants as a cover to gather data for an international organization. Reading those words tore at my heart. I thought of Amanda, the times she had brought me food, the sweet words that I now knew were lies. I thought of Michael, all those months of suffering, never realizing that his own wife was poisoning him. Michael began treatment with dialysis and new medication. His health slowly improved gradually, but steadily. One afternoon he held my hand, lowered his head, and choked out, "Mom, I was blind. I trusted Amanda and almost made you lose everything." I stroked his hair like when he was a child and softly said, "Son, what matters is that you're still here. That's enough for me." But inside, a scar remained, not just because of Amanda's betrayal, but because I had let myself be pushed to the brink of death without daring to question. I returned to our the home, where John still sat motionless in his wheelchair. I sat beside him and told him everything from Ethan's recording to Amanda being handcuffed. I didn't know if he understood it all, but when I finished, I saw him blink, and then 2 tears rolled down his hollow cheeks. I held his hand, squeezed gently, and for the first time in years, I felt a response from him, a faint squeeze back, as if he wanted to say he understood. I broke down in tears, not from pain, but from realizing that no matter what, I still had him. I still had family. Ethan became the little hero of the neighborhood. The day he ran to my house, wrapped his arms around my neck, and whispered, "Grandma, I'm sorry I spoke too late, but at least I saved you." I laughed and cried at once, holding my precious grandson, feeling the warmth of his small body. "You are the bravest boy I've ever known," I told him, brushing his hair. Ethan smiled, the first smile in days. Looking into his eyes, I saw innocence still there, despite what he had witnessed. I promised myself I would protect Ethan, give him a childhood no one could steal. On the final night, I sat in the small room under the flickering oil lamp. I opened the old journal and wrote the last lines. "Blood alone doesn't make a family. Sometimes it's the truth that shows us who truly deserves that name. I have lost much, but I have found myself again." I closed the journal, set down the pen, and listened to the rain tapping on the roof. A strange peace filled me, as if the storm had passed, leaving a clear sky. I looked out the window, the pale moonlight spilling onto the yard, and knew that even though the road ahead was long, I would never let myself be blinded again. I had reclaimed my strength, and that was the most precious thing no one could ever take away. Some wounds time can never erase, yet it is from them that we realize the most valuable thing in life is not wealth or fame, but sincerity and love without deceit. I lost many illusions, but in return, I found the strength to protect those who truly deserve to be called family. Each of us may face moments where we must choose between silence or speaking up, between bowing down or standing tall. I have learned that courage is not always a grand gesture. Sometimes it's simply daring to face the truth and refusing to be deceived again. And you? If you were in my place, what would you do? Stay silent for a false peace, or speak up to protect what's right? I truly hope to hear your thoughts in the comments. And if this story touched you, stay with us for the next ones, where we will share, reflect, and learn how to walk through life's storms together. Because who knows, your story might just be the light that guides someone else.